Now, South Africa prepares to host the G20 summit this year. Johannesburg finds itself grappling with pressing challenges. This includes budget cuts, security concerns, and infrastructure maintenance. Now, in an interview with the Citizen newspaper, the DA's Nicole van Dyk says that Johannesburg needs to reclaim its status as the city of gold, but it may first need to become the city of miracles. Van Dyk joins us now to have a chat about this and a little bit more. Nicole, thank you so much for the time. Old infrastructure, old problems, old inefficiencies, old developments. I'm going to use another phrase here. The city of gold has become the city of old. Am I right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's not only a city of old because, you know, old can also be transformed into something good. But it's actually just decay. And it's not only decay of our infrastructure, but urban decay as well. We're seeing a lot of our public open spaces being completely overtaken. Almost every single park, pavement, or open space for pedestrians has been overrun. We're seeing very little bylaw enforcement. And then, of course, just bringing it back to infrastructure, our roads are collapsing. We've even got roads blowing up that still haven't been fixed. And that's within our inner city. And right now, as we sit, there's so much rain in the city, which is wonderful. It's a welcome thing for our water. But in terms of our power, we're seeing power cuts all over the city right now that are taking days to resolve.
Are we at a 2010 moment? Are we at a FIFA World Cup 2010 moment here where the resuscitation of the city came through because of the revamp we had to endure because of the World Cup that we were hosting then? Or ultimately meaning, is the G in G20 going to bring the G in gold back to the city of old?
Well, look, I mean, one can only hope that happens, but it shouldn't need to take an international event for such a thing to happen. We've got residents who are regular taxpayers who expect to see that level of service delivery on a daily basis, regardless of whether there's a World Cup, a G20, or if it's just a regular Monday morning.
Yeah.
These are things that need to happen within the city of Johannesburg. And unfortunately, our entities are not delivering on this as we speak at the moment.
We've got a dwindling budget, though, and that becomes the key worry here, right? Because that dwindling budget, there needs to be spread out as vastly as possible in order to achieve all these needs. Is it a case of now just needing to prioritize as opposed to spreading thin?
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We do have a new budget coming up in July. We got to start passing that within the May-June cycles. And I think a big thing about this is we need to actually go back to zero-based budgeting for a lot of these entities. A lot of these entities just receive an upfront sum of money without actual and regular justification of what they need that sum of money for. And we've got entities like Metropolitan Trading Company, which is supposed to be bringing broadband into the city. You've got the Joburg Property Company. Neither of these entities actually deliver services. And I think if we had to go to zero-based budgeting, you would see Joburg Water, City Power, and the JRA getting much more funding that they actually require because they are able to justify it. So I think zero-based budgeting would absolutely help, and it needs to just become baseline service delivery budgets. We cannot afford anything that relates to vanity. It's really just about the basics of infrastructure right now.
Nicole, would you mind just sharing with our viewers as well then, for those that may not know what zero-based budgeting may necessarily be in this case? That's starting over every single year, correct?
Well, there is already a 3-year budget that is in place that we've passed in council. That doesn't eradicate the fact that essentially you start off with no budget in your account, and then you motivate for what you need. So Joburg Water, essentially, they could then actually justify why they need that basic minimum of 3 billion rand. That is what they said that they need as a bare minimum to get the city going. City Power isn't far from that. Both of them are sitting with 27 to 30 billion rand infrastructure budget backlogs. And again, I mean, if you're looking at entities like the Joburg Department of Tourism, they don't essentially need a lot of money right now. We do have tourism coming to the city of Johannesburg. And if they are not able to justify, if that entity is not able to justify what money they're going to be needing, or MTC, who essentially got a 500 million rand cash injection in the last budget cycle, that's money that could rather be going to other entities because they're able to justify what they need.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about bureaucracy, though, and how that stifles things.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that we're seeing in bureaucracy at the moment, especially if I can just keep it relating to the entities, is our supply chain management systems. Recently, we just saw a situation where Joburg Water had to do a deviation. This means that they're not moving to the proper supply chain management of getting proper funding approved. Because it's emergency-based funding, they get that money almost immediately. The Auditor General writes it off as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that's, again, money that we're not utilizing effectively because we needed that emergency budget just to get tankers in. If we could go back to zero-based budgeting, you could have you could have Joburg Water actually putting in an effective budget to purchase their own tankers, and that would eventually start saving us a lot of money as well. But the bureaucracy is we've got a very difficult supply chain process. Our bidding and evaluation committees aren't sitting fast enough. And yeah, it's just, you've got 44,000 officials where certain things have to be passed through, as well as council sittings where you've got 18 political parties all arguing for somewhat different things regarding, depending on which side of the bench you're on. So there's so much at play. And unfortunately, the people who are caught in the middle are businesses and our residents who are, it has to be said, taxpayers. And a lot of them, as we sit as ward councillors, we've watched over the festive season the city really decay because service delivery grinds to a halt over December. And normally that hasn't been a problem.
Yeah.
You've watched things happen, but you've now got residents who are threatening to immigrate, semigrate, and a lot of big businesses as well. And that's taxpayer money that, if it leaves our budget, decreases even more because we don't have the rates to support it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I fully agree with that. But at the same time, one also has to note that it's also up to citizens to, for example, play their part. In your article, you make note as well then of, for example, when the New Zealand rugby team came to play, there was this mass cleanup that was then initiated, but things are then back to where they were before that happened. Ultimately, if we as citizens, we as consumers didn't litter, didn't commit to all these other acts as well, which keep the city down, we could be in a better position.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a time where residents were very happy to do that. If I could just, focus on Randburg for a second, there were a lot of businesses who were putting a lot of money in to the areas, bringing in cleanup committees, paying for private security to keep their areas safe. And now that's just not happening anymore because they're not seeing their return on investment. A very good example is Cresta Shopping Centre. Cresta Shopping Centre actually used to help us, fixing some of the robots around the area. They used to help with the paving of the area. And as the area further around Cresta started to degrade, they're not doing that. It's the same in the Randburg CBD. So businesses and residents can only go so far. You can't continue to ask residents to keep doing something, adopt a park, adopt a substation, adopt a road, and now we've got to adopt a robot. So you can't keep asking residents to do that. There's got to be a 50-50 and a give and take. Residents also need to see that if they, and they are very often willing to help and get involved. But if the city is not willing to do that, then it makes it very difficult. And if I can bring it back to our public open spaces, one that comes to mind in particular is Delta Park. Delta Park is a flagship park for the city of Johannesburg. Yeah. We've got the Bureaucracy Community Association that takes so much care of that area, and they get no support from the city, especially as more recyclers move in. The area has been overtaken. There's far more rampant crime.
Indeed.
And they're getting no support from the city.
Nicole, look, I fully agree with you, and I think it has to go with us as citizens wanting this to also work, but then government definitely, and especially the local council, playing its role more often than not as well. We certainly hope that the city doesn't necessarily fall apart, but it is worrying signs. Nicole van Dyk is the DA's spokesperson then for Environment and Infrastructure Services. Thank you so much for your time then this morning.